is Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop.
April Fools!
Hey, you monkeys! What are you doing in my shop?
I
don't know.
We're fixing. There!
You're fixing things? You better get out of here. You knuckleheads. Don't forget your coats. It's cold out there. Oh my goodness. You turn your back for just a second and they just take over. Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop. I think we're live. I think I messed up the first time and we weren't really live, but I think we are live this time. That's why we were a few seconds late this time. Yeah, there we go. We got 5 viewers now. I don't know if you guys saw our little intro there or not. I don't know how this all works, you know. When does it actually go live? Okay, we've got a good program for you today, I think. Got my usual outline and a number of items. I see people coming on here now. So, morning to everybody. At least it's morning here. I realize it may be late afternoon or evening where you are. Okay. We'll just start at the top and work our way down the list. My buddy Ron, who had COVID back around Christmas time, is still on oxygen, and he carries an oxygen tank with him pretty much everywhere he goes, but he is doing better very slowly each day, but he is doing better. Our band has played now twice at the barbecue place in Rolla, Missouri, which is Dickey's. We do that every Tuesday evening at 6:30. And once we feel like we're comfortable there, and we're getting better each time, I think we'll maybe do some live clips from there or something, or if not live, we'll at least film some things that we can show on our shop talks, or maybe even put out a separate video. You just never know. Mountain View, Arkansas, that's coming up June 9th through the 12th. We'll be down there, and it's basically just a free-for-all jam. We just go down there to have fun. I was going to say there's probably at least a half dozen of us from our area here that are going down there. Several of them camp. Others stay at motels. Me. Yeah, my idea of camping is like poor room service. That's my idea of camping. These days anyway. You know, I was a Boy Scout, and whenever I camped, it always, and I mean like every single time, and we went camping quite a bit, every single time it rained or snowed. One morning we woke up, there was 6 inches of snow on the ground. Just like, yeah, that's just the way it works with me. That's why I'm not much of a camper these days, I think. Anyway, the channel, we passed 75,000 subscribers and flew past that. We're at 75,000 over 200 the last I looked. Maybe higher than that now. I think the daily vlogs have really pumped that up. They've pumped up a little bit of everything, my view time, everything. So it's really working well for the daily vlogs, and that's of course my incentive to keep doing the daily vlogs, is because I am getting much better response. So it's working out really well for me. My son's started that channel about homestead horsemanship, and he's got a really cool video that I would like to direct you to. I have a link in the description. The link is him and his friends actually skiing behind a horse. And I thought you might like that. Horse snow skiing is really what it amounts to. So anyway, it's a good video, and I do have a link to it in the description. So click on that after our shop talk, please. I also have links to Alan Dust Sander, or at least I think it's got his email there or something. And then I have a link to John Manura's AccuSlice also. So check out those things if you're so inclined. In the past few shop talks, we've mentioned Itchy Boots. And of course, she's still doing her thing. I think she's in Honduras right now. As I've mentioned before, she's really a fun YouTuber to watch. She shows you parts of these countries that you would never ever see, and so I'm enjoying watching her trek through Central America. But the reason I brought that up is I thought I would mention another. So many of you seem to really appreciate the fact that I told you about Itchy Boots. I'll tell you about another guy that I watch. Now, when I first started watching this guy, I didn't have this impression, but I have this impression now. I think he's really a nice guy. I really think his heart's in the right place. I really think he tries to do good, and so that's one of the main reasons I'm recommending the channel. But also, he's huge on YouTube. His channel is Heavy D Sparks. Heavyd Sparks, Sparks. And not only that, but he gives away trucks and cars and things all the time. So, I mean, he's really big on YouTube. And but he does some really neat things, and he mostly rescues and gets very stuck equipment out of bad places. That's one of the main things he does. But he does other things too. He does things like investigating, cold murder cases. I mean, like, he'll go out and look for clues and things like that. I mean, he just about does anything. It's very enjoyable to watch. Very much high production on his videos, all that. So now there is a lot of commercialism in his videos. I will tell you that much. But he really seems to be a really good guy. And I think his heart is in the right place, and he tries to do the right thing all the time. His name is, again, the channel name is Heavy D Sparks. All jammed together. Morel mushroom time here on the farm, and I haven't looked yet because it got down into 25 or something like that last night again. Oh, it's cold down here. So I'll be looking tomorrow. But on the other side of the coin, I've been talking about my Martin birds, not my Martin guitars, my Martin birds. And they did show, I had mentioned or predicted that they would show up about March 28th. Well, doggone, they let me down. They showed up March 29th. So anyway, that very next day, March 28th was Trinian's birthday, by the way. So I was kind of predicting they'd be here on his birthday, but they showed up a day late. So they were here, and now they haven't settled in yet or anything, and those were just the early scouts, and those birds have left, and they'll come back again. That's kind of the way that works. I have a fishing video clip, and I'm going to show you that right now. Here we are at the pond. Leighton is a good fisherman. He's sitting out there. He's got his floater out there in the water, and anyway, he's going to catch him a big one. Trinian over there, he's fishing and using live bait and just reeling it in, and he's caught 4 or 5. I caught 2 crappie, and Trinian caught a bass and 3 bluegill, I think. And the dogs are right here. Here's Bella just relaxing at my feet, and there's Tucker. They're all watching the fishing action. Trinian just caught a monster bass. And I say monster, it's probably 3 pounds, 2-3 pounds. Can't see it from over at the far side, so we're going over here to take a look. Get out of the way, Leighton. Whoa, that is a big one. That's probably 2.5, 3 pounds.
It's heavy.
It's a pretty big old, look at that pole bend. Yeah, that's a big one. Nice job, buddy. What do you got to say about that?
It's big. Ah!
Good job. Okay, that was probably a total fail. But let me just go back to the photo real quick. This photo was from Kai, and Kai, I'm sorry I messed up your part here. doggone it, my kids or my grandkids were here, and you know, it was just a zoo. Anyway, Kai made this a bench hook, and here's a photo of it. I won't be able to talk while I'm showing you the photo. And so a bench hook is, here's my version of it to show you guys what a bench hook is. And it's got a slightly beveled edge here and a slightly beveled edge here. And you hook it on the edge of your table, and that keeps your work from sliding across the table. In other words, if you're carving something, you can put it right here and carve into it. He made that as a tribute to me, and I just wanted to read you what he said here. I don't even know if this is coming out where you can see it or not at this point. I'm so confused. Anyway, Kai says, "You'll never know just how inspiring you are to myself and many other creative people. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate you more than words can say. I made this in your honor, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for sharing your talent with us." And that is Kaizenberg Instruments. It's kaizenberg@yahoo.com is his email. And then I think if you go, I'm trying to read this here. He's on Instagram at Kaizenberg. So Kaizenberg is Kaysenburg. So he's on Instagram with a slash there, Kaizenberg. So check him out. Thank you so much, Kai, for the kind words and for that little tribute there, making that thing. And I am sorry I messed up your part of this. I really am. Just sometimes I get too many things going at once. I got another, and by the way, that came in on March 25th, just so you have a reference there. I got another email from Wade Hampton on March 18th, and he said, "I received my new deer antler mandolin saddle today. It fits perfectly. It's sitting on the base, meaning the lower part of the bridge. It's sitting on the bridge like it was custom made for it. I couldn't be more pleased with it. Thank you very much." And then he wrote a nice letter, and then he at the very end he closed with, "Thank you for the lovely deer antler mandolin saddle. It puts a big smile on my face, and it sounds amazing as it sounds as amazing as it looks." So there you go. The deer antler mandolin saddles, that's been a big hit. My mandolin instruction training for beginners has been a big hit too. So those are my two big products that I've put out that have really done well. Okay, that covers viewer mail, and I assume we're still live. It looks like it. Boy, I tell you, when I can screw up, I can screw up better than anybody. I really can. There's nobody that can make mistakes better than me. That's the one thing I'm king at. Let's see, shop projects update. Okay, the acoustic bass really turning out even better than I was hoping. I mean, it really is. It's turning out great. I want to show you a close-up here. I've been showing it again in my daily vlogs, if you're wondering. It is pretty much all back together. If I show it at this distance, can you even see anything? Although that doesn't really matter because I realize that camera has a very low resolution for our live shop talks. But anyway, you can pretty much see I've done some of the finished touch-up on this side, and it really does match pretty well. All I did was spray some gloss lacquer on it and then took steel wool to it, and it's pretty hard to tell where one finish starts and the other one stops. You can still see some of the dark lines and things, but considering how bad this thing was, that's a home run and then some. That's a grand slam home run, in fact. And look at this. You know, I'm not taking it easy on it. I'm hitting it. I'm not. That's pretty hard hitting. It's it's solid as a rock. It really is. You always hear that thing, it's stronger than it was before. No, I don't think it's stronger than it was before, but I think it's pretty much every bit as strong. There might be a place or two where it is stronger, and there's probably a place or two where it's not as strong. But in general, I'd say it's just about as good as it was brand new, and I don't think you're going to have to baby it, or, you know, I mean, I don't think it's something you'll have to, that the customer will have to baby or anything. Now the top, I haven't quite got to the finish touch-up yet. Get it in the right place. The top's still a little bit dull and things, and then this long crack here, I've only sanded it. I haven't cleaned it up yet, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, at least at a arm's length distance, you barely be able to tell it was ever even hurt. And I think it's going to be just perfectly fine. It's solid all over. There's no rattling. The only rattling I hear is the wires and the things bouncing around inside. But yeah, I really didn't even expect it to be as good as it is. It's a grand slam in my opinion. The world's finest mandolin ever built by a human. April Fools, that's not a statement, that's a goal. Anyway, it still hasn't changed much. I really haven't had much time to do more to it. But I do finally, at least, I do, and I think I showed this the last time, I do have all of that fancy shell inlay in there, and boy, that was a job and a half. So. But those are the main two things. The Gibson with the finish, I still haven't got back to that. I got to get back to it, and I'm just going to have to bite the bullet. Going to have to sand 99% of that finish off and start over, I guess. The fisheye eliminator didn't seem to even affect it at all. Not even that much, which I kind of didn't think it would, because I don't call what the problem is with that as fisheye. All lacquer goes away from any defect, and those are just pores, holes, and yeah. So there you go. And yeah, I know about silicone and all those other things. I don't think that's my issue here, but it may be. I don't know. The main topic of today's shop talk we're going to get to here right now. And then we're going to do questions and answers. So get your questions ready. Be sure to try to put a couple of question marks in front of your question. Otherwise, I have trouble finding them. I'm a very poor reader. All right, so here's some of the common items that I use for setups. I'm going to show the most common first, and we'll go from there. The setup work, similar to what I was showing Kim the other day, Kim Warner, and you saw his videos. By the way, when we're talking about videos, I might mention that tonight, I believe, Emery's going to have part 8 ready of the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human. So part 8 is probably be coming out tonight on that. Okay, well, the most common thing that I use for setups is a pick. I mean, that's the first most common thing. Now, they're only valuable if you know how thick they are. So you kind of have to have some way to know really good, accurate measurements on thickness. You can buy thickness calipers like this at Harbor Freight for right around 20 bucks. I mean, so, and they'll get the job done. They really will. These are a little bit better brand, and I would recommend these if you can afford them. These are iGaging, I-G-A-G-I-N-G, and I think you have to have these for setup work. I really do. I never had them at the beginning, but boy, once I started using these things for setup work, I didn't look back. These things change everything, because you can measure in your preferred measurements. You can either do millimeters, or you can do thousandths of inches, or you can even do fractions if that's really what you want to do. I wouldn't do fractions personally, but thousandths of inches, or millimeters, and in very detailed millimeters. I guess you're talking tenths of a millimeter. I'm not really sure how deep they go on the millimeter side of the house. But anyway, you need this to tell how thick this is. And you also have to turn them on. If you have the digital kind, you can get the analog kind, and they're just fine too. This is 17 thousandths of an inch. So I use this as my gauge at the first fret. And, you know, some people, 17 thousandths, that's way too high. Well, you know, back off a little bit and understand that you can use this still to get all kinds of measurements. In other words, like on the big bass string, I probably just barely have it touching it. And by the time I get down to the treble E string, I'm lifting the string just slightly with this, you know, or some amount. And I kind of know my amount because I've done it for years. I can't tell you exactly how much. It's just it's an experience thing. But as you go from, you know, your bass side to your treble side, you lift the string slightly more and more. And you can still do that with just one pick. And you can do a very good job on your setup. By the way, 17 thousandths of an inch is not thick, boys and girls. It is really thin. And, I mean, this is one of the, you know, you want the thin pick. It's very, very thin. And if your string is just that high, I don't even care if it's the E string or which string, you're not going to think your instrument is really hard to play unless you're one of those super picky musicians. And there are a lot of those folks out there. But your average musician, if their instrument was just, if the string was just touching this all the way across, the average musician would say, boy, this is easy to play. I mean, that's the truth. The rest of you that are super, super picky, that last 10%, no, you wouldn't think so. Okay. The next thing that I use that's a common thing that you can use for instrument setup, again, you're going to need this, is I just take an old saddle, worn out saddles. And then what I do is I carefully file off, sand off, however you want to do it. I use my thickness sander because I have it. And then I set it to an exact thickness. Like this here is 60 thousandths of an inch on that end. This one is 70 thousandths of an inch on this end. And I write it down on the saddle on each end. That way, if I commonly want to use those numbers, then I've got it ready. I don't have to deal with a feeler gauge trying to get 3 or 4 blades out there to come up with my number. I just set the end of one of these to the exact thickness that I want, and then, you know, as long as you check it with this, for instance, here's one of my more common ones. This one's 80 and 90. So I've got the 80 treble side here, and I've got my 90 bass side there. And you can see there that I wrote the numbers on there. And it works great. So just a common thing. This is far better than a feeler gauge in my opinion, because this doesn't change. And your feeler gauge, the negative of a feeler gauge is, number one, all the dang blades, and then you got to get it fitted in there. They're just kind of awkward. And if you have even just a grain of dust, I mean, a grain of salt is probably 10 or 12 thousandths of an inch. I mean, seriously, it's, you know, anything in between the blades is going to mess up your measurements. So this is by far superior, in my opinion, to even a feeler gauge once you get it set, you know. So there's a very simple way to, check your action at your 12th fret. Much handier than a feeler gauge. I guarantee you. You'll thank me, you'll bless me if you do that. I mean, it's really that good. Of course, I made those obsolete when I got this gauge. Now, this gauge is not a common everyday thing. I admit that. But this is your taper gauge that everybody asks me about. Once I got this, that obsoleted the need for those saddles to be, because this is called an in-size taper gauge. It's a 4630-1E. Most of you can repeat that number in your sleep now because you've heard it so many times on the channel. But once I get this, that obsoleted my need for those other things. So, but if you can't afford this, then this is a super good option. It really is. Okay, a couple other common things. Just a standard old mill bastard file used in setup. Again, you've seen this before. It's a 6-inch mill bastard file. It's a single cut. It's not a double cut or anything. And if you buy a good brand, like this is a Nicholson, made in USA, it says, And if you get that, it'll last you virtually forever. I mean, frets are softer than this by a lot. So this will last a very, very, very long time. Years and years of lots of use. You want to bevel off the ends of this if you decide to do this. I've shown this before, of course, so many of you already know all about this. I just made the wooden handle to fit me. You can make your own design and style to fit you. I rounded off the back end because it fits in my hand right there and I can push real good with it. Using this, you want to use very light pressure for the most part. Unless you know you really got to take off a lot, and then of course you can bear down on it. But for the most part, you use very light pressure, and you can literally feel the high frets with this. And it's only 6 inches long. The only other thing I say about this, and it sounds like a broken record because you've heard this before, is that there is no such thing as a perfectly flat file. Every file produced has a very slight underbow to it, if you will, and you want to turn that bow down. So in other words, if this is the file, see how I've got it bowed? That's the way you want to glue it to your board. In other words, you want the curved surface down, the cupped surface up. And it's going to be so minor that you're going to say, mine's flat. Well, you got to look at it closer because it takes a really close eye to see the difference. And that's the way you want to turn it, because you're dealing in thousands of inches, remember, and that's all that you're going to have on your cup. Your cup is only going to be a couple of thousandths of an inch, but you have to be able to see that with your eye. And if you can't see it with your eye, try a straight edge or whatever it takes. But anyway, make sure you put it on your block of wood that way, or you won't be happy. Okay, now some more common items. This is really, I don't know if this is common or not, but it's pretty plain Jane, about as common as you can get. It's just a little piece of aluminum. That's all it amounts to. Now, what do I use this for? Well, if you don't have a real good plastic fretting hammer or some other kind of hammer that you can use for fretwork, for setups, you can drive your frets down with just a little thin piece of aluminum like this. You notice how this one's got an indentation across the bottom, and that's from years of use of driving frets in. The aluminum has actually taken to the shape of the fret a little bit, which is a good thing. I mean, you could file that in there if you wanted to. But the advantage of this over just a hammer is I can put, like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to show it, but let's say this, pretend that this is the fret, and you can get this right on the end of the fret like that, and then hit it and drive the end of the fret in better. You can focus your pressure with this really good. But also, it won't mar up your frets at all. It won't make any marks on your fret. And you can actually use just a regular roofing hammer with this. I mean, just a regular framing hammer or anything. Any kind of steel hammer with this, because this insulates the steel from the fret. So just that little block of aluminum, it's really a handy, just common item that you can use to do setup work, and you will love it for driving frets in, I promise you. It's a very handy thing. Another common item that you may already have is, a fret of, a set of nippers. And these are what I would call I would call these end nippers, I guess. And the only thing about this is almost all nippers have a slightly beveled edge. In other words, if you look right where they come together, they're beveled in kind of like that. All I did was file this part off, and so that now they come together perfectly flat. So in other words, I just took them to a grinder and I just lightly did this on the grinder until I got the face perfectly flush. And these are just standard end nippers that you can buy at any hardware store, and then I just ground the face of them off. So that's why I refer to this as a common item. You can just get it pretty much anywhere. It's not a specialty tool, in other words. So this is about using common things or adapting common things, and so this is an adaptation, if you will, but very good for pulling frets out. Another adaptation type item is just a standard putty knife, and you can take like some of them are flexible, and sometimes you want a flexible thing. Most of the time for me, I don't want them too terribly flexible, because whenever they're very flexible, you'll end up kinking the blade, bending the blade in half, something like that. Ask me how I know. I like them a little stiffer, actually, and this was like an artist palette knife, and I think the blade was really long on this originally. I think it was like this long, and then it tapered back down to kind of a round point. But I didn't want all that. I wanted to shorten it to make it stiffer, and it's very thin, and then I really sharpen the end. Now, what do I use it for? Well, taking off a fingerboard or taking off a bridge or something like that. But again, it's just a common item, common available item. Putty knives are the same way, and you can buy putty knives in different thicknesses and different, blade hardnesses and things. And you just kind of have to experiment with that to find what you like, to be perfectly honest with you. And you can make them in different shapes and sizes and things like that. But they're very common and not expensive, and you can adapt them any way you want to, and you can sharpen them any way you want to, and you can shape them any way you want to, if you have a grinder, of course. Okay, I think those are the only items I was going to talk about today. I'm sure there's a myriad of others that we could talk about, but we were mainly talking about setup work. Now, granted, some of those items are a little bit on the fringe, but if you have to take a fretboard off to do better setup work, sometimes you have to do that. Okay, anyway, I think that's going to conclude that part of the presentation. So I guess we're ready for questions. And I'm going to scroll back up here, so bear with me as I try to find the first questions. Take me just a second. And I'm looking for those question marks in front. Looks like the first one I see is Peter Bryan. Well, Jerry, that April Fool's Day joke really was good. We were all over at ST65, so we are 30 minutes late and are watching on the recorded version. Okay, good, Peter. Thank you. ST65, it seems like I should know what that is, but I don't. Seems like I've heard that or seen that. Why am I drawing a blank on that? I don't know what that is, actually. Gary Boer. Hello, Gary. Jerry, would you talk about which brand of lacquer you were using for finishes and why you chose that brand? Well, I do think, I complain a lot about lacquer. I gotta be honest, Gary, but I've tried a bunch of different ones, and the best one for me has been the Sherwin-Williams brand. It's their high build lacquer, and it's a very common lacquer that they know about. So if you go into a Sherwin-Williams store and you say, I want some high build lacquer, they pretty much give you the same thing every time. I'll show you the can here, just in case. The can itself says Sherwood on it. It says Pro. And high build is HI-BILD is the way they spell it. And then the number there, in case you can't read it, is T70CT6. And then the last thing there is that last serial number, or whatever that is 6509-39077. But anyway, this really is a significantly better lacquer than most lacquers I've tried. It really is. I still complain about it because they all suck, really. I mean, none of them are your favorite thing, because lacquers are a pain in the neck. But of all that said, this one's still the best one that I found. And when I say that, it's significantly better. While we're on that, I want to point out something else. While we're on lacquer, you really don't even think about using lacquer. I mean, seriously, unless you use this with it. This is Mohawk Super Blush Retarder, well, it says that twice there, M716-3407. Don't even think about using a different retarder. I'm not kidding you. I've probably tried 6 or 8 different retarders, and none of them are worth a hoot. I mean, not even worth, I wouldn't even walk across the street if you gave me a whole pickup load of most of those others. This one, yeah, this one's worth it. This one absolutely 100% works. It's not even, there's not even a comparison between this one and all the others. And trust me, I'm not making that up. I don't get nothing, I don't get no kickbacks. They have no idea I'm saying that. This one's the one that works. The rest of them all are just toys, if you want to know the truth. But seriously, don't even think about using lacquer unless you put that in it. Yeah, you'll thank me, you'll bless me once you try that. That's expensive, I ain't gonna lie to you, but I mean, what isn't expensive these days, and especially when you're doing this kind of work? This kind of work's, everything's expensive. Okay, off the soapbox, Gary, thank you for getting me started there. Dennis Cleveland, does the antler saddle take stain? Yeah, you can stain them. There's a lot of people that just have to have them black, boy. Me personally, I prefer them white. I think they look cool. You know, I bet there's so many people that want that traditional look. And, anyway, so if they're not black, they don't want them. That's just the way a lot of folks are. And you can make them black if you want to. They do take black stain really good. I just don't stain them because it's just a hassle. The hassle factor, if you will. Herschel Rector, do you have thoughts on the effects of saddle width on string spacing, on playability, and sustain to share? Okay, well, there's a can of worms if I ever heard one. Yeah, Herschel Rector's asking, do I have thoughts on the effects of saddle width and string spacing on playability? String spacing I'm not so sure about. I'm not sure quite where you're going there with what your question means to you. And sustain. Well, the short answer is no, I don't have any. The long answer is, well, there's always a little here and a little there, I guess, that you can know about this. Yeah, I don't know where to go with that. I really don't. I'm not trying to play dumb. There's so many different aspects to everything, and in terms of the width of the saddle, I'm not quite sure if you're talking about width as across the top of the guitar, as in length, or if you're talking width as in thickness. If you're talking thickness, I don't think it's too big a deal. I don't want to get them hugely thick. I think in the neighborhood, and I think you got this kind of play, I think from roughly 125 thousandths, which is 1/8 of an inch, down to around 90 thousandths. I think anywhere in there you're fine. I would not go thicker than 125 thousandths. I think at that point you're going to start muddying up your tone a little bit. I think under 90 thousandths you're going to start breaking strings because it's going to be too much of a pinch point. In terms of length across the saddle, across the bridge, if you will, longer the better in general. I don't like the kind that go down through the little, I don't like them when they poke through that. I like to keep them on the top of the bridge, if you will, where they don't go down the sides. That's just personal preference. Going down through the sides and making them longer is not a bad thing. So if you like that style of bridge and saddle, feel free, go for it. But longer is generally a little bit better because it helps spread the sound across a little bit better. So I guess that's my thoughts on it. I didn't have any thoughts on it, remember? I don't know. Herschel, thank you for the question. MRLO Notes. Mr. Low Notes. There you go. I guess that's what that is. I told you I can't read. How do you cut a saddle slot without access to a router. Thanks, Jerry. Alan Burgess. Well, Alan, I don't know if you could. A saddle slot without a router. Why don't you ask me a hard question? I guess you could if you watch this for a second. I'll get a demo.
Opal's got a little shop, coffee, tea, and soda pop, written on the faded window sign. Ruby and Pearl are her best friends. There you'll find the three of them, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30. You can set a watch by their routine. Classic small town Norman Rockwell scene. They talk about the where's and when.
Oh, what a lovely voice. And miss that lady a lot. She was a great bass player and great singer, Renee Caudill. And she was Emery's mother and passed away of brain cancer. Anyway, back to the question. Could you possibly cut this slot without a router? Well, yeah, not really in one way, and then in another way, yeah, you could do it. If you like the long slot where you cut all the way through, see see how it comes down thin here? If you took a saw and you just sawed all the way across this, then you'd have to put in the long saddle that also follows the curve here. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you could actually just use a regular saw. I would probably use, what do you call those back saws where they have that band on them? I can't think of what the right term is for that. On camera here, thinking out loud, I can't think of the name of it. I know it, but I just can't think of it. The back saw, if you it would have to be a stiff saw, a straight saw that would cut a fine line, and you could do that. Now, it would help if the kerf on that was, in the neighborhood of what I told you before, 90 to 125 thousandths. I would not want it any wider than 125 thousandths. That would be the widest. So if you have a saw like that and you're good at it, you could saw the slot in your bridge with a saw. I mean, you really could. You could, if you're really good and you're brave, you could even do it on a bandsaw, but you didn't hear that here. But I'd do it that way if it was me. Okay, so there you go. That's the only way I can think of that you could do it without a router. Now, when I say router, I'm using a Dremel tool, but you could use a regular router too, of course. I hope that made sense to you. So, by the way, Alan, thank you for the question. Steven Sparks, he must be related to Heavy D Sparks. Need a lesson or two on soundpost to understand their use and placement. How about it? Well, Stephen, if you're talking soundposts, most likely you're talking violins. Now, when I say most likely, on a few rare occasions, and I really want you to hear the word rare occasions, I have put them in other instruments. But I don't recommend them in other instruments. I just want to be clear. But if you had a cheap instrument that you're just trying to help a kid learn how to play on, and the top was sunk in, you could put a sound post in there to keep the top up. That would be okay. That would be one of the rare occasions. But when you're talking about sound posts for a violin, it's a totally different thing. And sound post adjustment on a violin, this is one of those deals where if you ask, 10 real good violin setup people, you're going to get 10 different answers. I pretty much guarantee you. The way I do it on sound post setup is I like to see them just behind the treble foot, about, I'm going to say an 1/8 inch gap behind the treble foot. Some people go further back. The further back you go, typically the slightly bassier sound you're going to get. But there is always a point of diminishing return. No matter what you do on anything, on everything on instruments, there's always a point of diminishing return. So in other words, too much of a good thing is just not good. And so you can slide it a little bit further back if you want to get a little deeper sound. But if you go too far, you've gone too far, and it's going to start to sound muddy and like you're playing in a barrel and just kind of craziness. So there's a sweet spot there, and you'll have to experiment with to hear what you think is the best sweet spot. Do not, and this is me talking, okay, but do not put your sound post directly under your foot. And if you do it, you'll know why, because it's going to sound harsh, tinny, thin. It's just going to sound bad. That's about all I can tell you. The only other thing about sound posts, they have a grain to them. I mean, a round, trying to find something here that I can use as a mimic, because I don't have a sound post, I don't think, handy. We'll pretend that this is a round sound post, okay? We'll pretend it's round, it's square, but we'll pretend it's round. And of course, the first thing is the sound post has to fit through the F-hole of your violin. And the second thing is you want it made out of a good high quality spruce, or western cedar would be okay, or redwood would probably be okay too. In fact, you might even want to do some experiments with those. But I would recommend spruce. That's the standard, industry standard. When you look at the, just like if you were looking at the end of a tree, you can see the rings, on the tree. Well, when you look at the end of your sound post, you'll see where those rings come through your sound post. Now, your sound post is going to be a I don't know, what do you call it, a bisection of those rings, and you're going to see lines going through the end of your sound post. If you really get anal about it and you really want to set up your sound post correctly, you want those lines perpendicular to the lines in your top. In other words, if your top is going this way, then you want your lines in your sound post going this way. That's the truth. You also typically want a slight bevel on both edges of your sound post on the treble side of it, because when you put it in there, you can pull it back and it'll wedge itself tight, because the top is going to be curved this way and the bottom is going to be curved this way. So you even want a slight curve on both corners as you're pulling it toward you through the sound hole. The tools, they make all kinds of tools, and I have all those tools. But my best tool, and I go back to it every time, is just a piece of coat hanger wire. I made it myself, and I just don't think you can beat it. It's got a little tiny, you're not going to see this on this camera for sure, but there's a real tiny, little tiny hook on the very end, and it's just a tiny little hook. And what I did was I sharpened it to a needle point, and then I just took just the least little tiny hook on the end of it. And then that way you can screw this in, and that little screw acts like the little hook acts like a screw, and you can screw that into your sound post. Then you can slide your sound post down through that F-hole, and then you can set it in place, and then you can pull it back towards you. That little hook gives you just enough pull that you can pull it tight in between the top and the back. And then on the other end of my little tool, I put a tiny hook on it here that I can reach in there, and I can grab the sound post and adjust it, or pull it harder if I need to, or whatever. I can push with it, and then I can pull it, and those kinds of things. So I made a little hook, and the bend in it is just for me to reach in there better. I can get in there better with this little bend in it also. So you just have to shape it to your own style. Commercially available ones are made also. I don't really like these that much. This end of it is pretty good because you can push and pull with this end of it. I like this end of it pretty well. I'm not too crazy about that big crazy end on there. And I know they make them different ways too, but this one here I just happen to have. Maybe even someone gave it to me. I don't remember where I got it. I might have bought it even, but I'm not crazy about this end of it. I much prefer my little hook on my thing, but I don't know. I could probably do another half hour on sound posts if you really want to. But that's really the gist of it right there. You don't want your sound post crazy tight, but here's my standard line that I tell everybody on violins. And if you bring a violin to me, you're going to hear this line. When a violin is set up perfectly, it is ready to fall apart. Now that's the truth. When they're set up perfectly, they are absolutely ready to fall apart. And what do I mean by that? Every single thing on a violin is friction. And everything is friction. There's nothing held together any other way other than obviously the glued body, but I mean beyond, once you got the body and the neck on there, everything else is friction. And so when they're set up perfectly, they're ready to fall apart. And if you put your sound post in correctly, when you take the tension off your strings, most likely your sound post is going to fall out, or with the least little bit of a jar, it's going to fall out. In other words, you don't want it jammed in there so tight that it won't fall out, if you understand my meaning there. That's kind of the standard in setting up a violin. Wow. Did I just say all that? Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. I'm going to move on. Otherwise, this whole thing's going to be on violins. Yeah, violins are touchy, and the people that are really into violins, they think I'm just a total Hoosier, out working on the back 40. They truly don't think I know anything about setting up violins, and that's just fine with me. They can just think what they want. What do you think about brass bridge plate? Well, this is Ray Lenoy. Ray, I don't think a lot of them. I gotta be truthful. I know that they do it for sometimes they do it because the holes are wore out underneath and you really need to fix it some way. Well, fine. If that's your purpose, then it at least will accomplish the purpose. But in terms of sound, I don't like them at all. They just harshen up the sound a lot, in my opinion. To my ear, the sound just became harsh, and I don't like them. So there's that. So unfortunately, I don't like them. So there you go. And I doubt anybody will ever change my opinion on that, because I've heard too many of them, and every single time I can almost tell without even looking inside the instrument when I hear one of those. They just have a different sound, and it's not usually a very pleasant sound in my opinion. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions here, and I'm sure there's exceptions there. I'm talking the mainstream, okay? Okay, Gary says he's currently trying the Mohawk Clear Gloss Classic. Yeah, Mohawk makes good stuff. That retarder was Mohawk. So, Gary, I'm not sure I've tried Mohawk lacquer, to be honest. I may have over the years. I don't know. I may have tried Mohawk. I don't know. You may be onto something there. They may actually be better. I do know the Mohawk retarder is the only retarder to even bother with. I bought that retarder, and I hate to say this. I bought it from I won't say the name. I bought it from a very popular instrument supply place that we all know about. I wouldn't give you 5 cents for their retarder. Not 5 cents. It's just junk. Absolute junk. At least the one I got was junk. I wouldn't give you nothing for it. It's that bad. Okay. And those of you who don't even know what we're talking about, when we're talking about retarder, if you don't put retarder in your lacquer, especially if you don't have very controlled spraying equipment and spray booths, etc., and humidity controlled, if you don't have all of that, then your lacquer is going to cloud up on you and turn milky white. Guarantee you. So, especially if you live in Missouri. Now, if you live on the desert where it's super, super dry, maybe not. But any place other than where it's super, super dry, your lacquer is going to cloud up on you. So that's why you need the retarder. It retards the moisture in the air for the lacquer. So hopefully that cleared that up, because I'm sure some of you were going, retarder, what the heck? You know, what are we talking about? You know, I'm sure some of you didn't have any idea what that was for. Okay, moving on. Which necks are better for guitars, one piece or the ones like Ibanez makes, 11 piece? Well, that's an open question, and again, you're going to get a gazillion different answers from a gazillion different people. You know, everybody's going to have a preference. I'll just tell you the pros and the cons, and you can make up your own mind. A single piece neck is beautiful, it's wonderful, but the one negative of the single piece neck is that it's one set of grain lines moving through that neck. And over time, that has a tendency to want to do whatever nature wants it to do over time. So that neck can twist, it can warp, it can bow, it can bend. It's not as strong. So that's the second negative. I don't even care what kind of neck it is, what it's made out of. It won't be as strong as if you laminated it, or might as well just call it what it is. If you turned it into plywood, that's what it is. You're getting multiple plies of wood. If you put those multiple plies of wood down there, that instantly stabilizes the outer two pieces. It makes it stronger and stiffer, and it's going to be less likely to do the underbow thing. If those plies are running down through the neck perpendicular like this, then it's less likely to do this, because those plies won't let that happen. So the plies are much, much stronger. They're much, much stiffer. In my opinion, if you also try to make them decorative and make them a feature, then I think they're also very pretty. So, you know, but then again, there's something to be said for just the solid look. I mean, the solid look looks really nice too, but the solid has those negatives, and they are absolute black and white negatives. So there you go. So I guess from that you can tell I much prefer the laminated or the plywood necks. The plywood is not a bad word. Everybody thinks that you got to say laminate because it just makes it sound much classier. It's kind of like the hide glue thing. They spell hide glue with a Y to make it sound classier. HIDE is just an acronym for holds initially, delaminates eventually. That's what HIDE is. And it's H-I-D-E because it's animal hide. You know, it came right off the animal. Okay, there you go. Have to get my digs in on that hide glue thing, because I got another comment the other day that, you know, the big difference between what you're doing with that Tight Bond and Elmer's glue is it won't come apart. You can't take it apart like you can take apart hide glue. And of course I laid into them, because I just absolutely hate that myth. It's a total, absolute 100% myth. It's absolutely 100% wrong. I just want you to know that. It's not sort of wrong. It's not sort of iffy. It's absolutely black and white wrong. And if you hear people saying it, you need to just straighten them out, because it's just been perpetuated forever and it's wrong. Tight Bond, in fact, while I'm on that, I want to tell you one more thing about this, because I think it's important. I really do, because you're wanting to build instruments and things, and so you need to know these things. How do I know them? 40 years of absolute trial and error experience. That's how I know it. The thing about Tight Bond that makes it superior to me to hide glue, there's two or three things. Hide glue, when you think about it, is it's not consistent, you know. And I know people are going to argue this. Yes, it is. I do it all the time. It's perfectly fine. No, it's not consistent, and it's a black and white fact. Here's why it's not consistent. First of all, there's differences in the kinds of animals that the hides come from. There's differences in how they made the glue to begin with. In other words, how hot they boiled it, how long they boiled it, how they cleaned it up, etc. and so forth. How they made the glue to begin with is one of the inconsistencies. The second more important inconsistency is how you, the user, used it after you got it. In other words, how hot did you make it? Did you get it too hot? Did you burn it? Did you get it not hot enough, where you put it on kind of cold and it's brittle, etc. and so forth? There's a bazillion different reasons why hide glue is not consistent. Conversely, Titebond, you buy this bottle of Titebond a year ago and this bottle of Titebond today, they're going to be virtually identical. There's not going to be any inconsistency at all. And you can count on that when you're taking something apart. Like, for instance, I can take apart a hide glue instrument and sometimes they just pop apart, just like that. I mean, like, they literally look at them and they fall apart. Other times, 3 men and a boy can't get that apart. There's no consistency at all. Titebond, yeah, it's a little bit harder on average to get apart, perhaps, a little bit. And I mean, when I say a little bit, I'm talking like, you know, instead of 50-50, it's like 55%, a little bit harder than hide glue to get apart, but it's consistent. It takes about the same amount of heat every time, the same amount of pressure every time to get it apart, where the hide glue, one time it just falls apart, the next time you're using hammers and chisels to get it apart. Yeah, so there's the big, huge difference between hide glue and Titebond, or any wood glue. It doesn't have to be Titebond. I'm done. I'm done with that. You didn't even ask. See, sometimes you get stuff you don't ask for. Okay. Do I have a video where I built a violin from scratch? I don't think so. I think all my violins were built before YouTube. And I haven't had another commission, so there you go. What is the mix on the lacquer and the blush? You know, I'm not going to comment on that exactly because I'm not sure I'm really good at that and know the best mix. I put a pretty good amount of lacquer in there. For me, I'm in a humid area. I put in, I'm going to say 20% retarder. Maybe that much. I'm not sure if I'm putting in that much or not. But I want you to hear me say, I don't know that I'm the expert on that. Maybe you should do some research on that and how much you really should use, because I haven't really done research on it, to be truthful. And maybe that's part of my problem. Maybe that's why I'm having trouble with lacquers. You know, might be. I don't know. I don't think so, because it seems to work pretty good. When it works great. You know, it just doesn't work great all the time, depending on the piece of wood you're putting it on. You know, on the average, I can get lacquer to spray like butter. I mean, on the average. But there's pieces like that Gibson that just say, nope, ain't having it. I don't care what you do, it ain't gonna work, period. And that's just the way it works with that stuff. Mike Saba, which I think Mike was in a previous previous shop talk, I mentioned him. I think he sent me a gift recently. I'm sorry, Mike, I can't keep it all straight, but thank you for the gift. Did Kim think his instrument sounded better with the new antler nut and saddle? I think so. I think he was happy with it. He didn't say a whole lot, but I think that's more his nature. He just doesn't talk too much. You know, he's a nice fella, really nice fella. I like Kim a lot. And I don't have to tell you, he's a super musician, just super musician. Kenneth Ennis, why is the picture and sound not in sync? That's just my slow internet, and that's probably never going to change. And even if I got Elon Musk Starlink, whatever it is, even if I got that, which I'm not sure I'm going to get that anymore, it keeps going up in price, and they still are delayed. And I've had a deposit in with them over a year, and still they're delaying it, and I don't know. And the price keeps going up and up. It's $112 or $15 a month now. When I first signed up for it, it was only like $90 a month. Anyway, Blaine Cox, best sound hole position for guitar and best hole shape. Well, Blaine, I don't know that I can answer that one. I really don't think I can answer that one because I haven't experimented at all. So to me, the best is kind of the standard, the Martin standard. And the reason is because it's proven. I know it works. I didn't do a lot of experimenting on a lot of things, Blaine. I pretty much kind of stuck to the standard. And here's part of the reasoning for that. Some of you may say that's kind of a cop-out after all the things you've done. But the truth is, 99.9% of everything you can even think of has already been tried. And everybody always comes back to the Martin standard. So that's, yeah. So I hate to tell you, I just don't have a good answer for that one. Matt Tommen, what about a brass saddle or a stainless saddle? Yeah, the same problem with that as the plate underneath. Yeah, I'm not happy with those at all, and I don't think you will be either if you try them. Your first sound on it, you're going to hear so much of a difference. You're going to go, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." But when you compare it to a good sounding bone saddle, there's no comparison. They don't sound good at all. Metal saddles just don't sound good. They're too harsh. That's me talking. You may feel differently. And that's okay if you do. I can't make you be right. Just kidding. No, I'm not happy with brass saddles, stainless saddles. I'm not happy with aluminum saddles. Yeah, I've tried all of those, and I don't like any of those. James Freestad, how about spray on lacquer? I've got a bunch of it, but will probably stain instead of using it. Well, yeah, pretty much lacquer is almost always sprayed on. When I say almost always, they do make a brushing lacquer. I do keep some of it on hand because there are times you want to just touch up places. And I use the brushing lacquer for that. Although I think standard lacquer would brush just fine, you know. But anyway, it's just convenient because it's in a can. It's ready mixed, etc. But anyway, no, most all lacquers are sprayed on. And you can even buy lacquer in an aerosol spray can. In fact, that's what I actually did. That's what I actually sprayed the base with. I used this Minwax Clear Aerosol Lacquer. This one is the gloss. I typically buy the gloss, and you can always tone it down with steel wool and make it a satin if you want. So that's what I typically do. I just keep the gloss on hand. So spray lacquer is definitely a positive, James. Ginger Jam, what is the best height for top and back of a mandolin? Well, that's kind of open question too, because there's a lot of options there on what you're calling the height. I'll just tell you roughly, and these are just rough. The sides on a mandolin approximately 1 7/16 inches. The top is probably roughly a 1/2 inch thick. So the dome of it's, a 1/2 inch high, higher than the 7/16. I mean the 1 7/16. And then your back is approximately, I'm going to say a little less than 5/8 of an inch. So it's thicker than the top, or the curl is a little bit more. So the back is probably close to 5/8 of an inch thick. So if you add that together from the top to the back, you've got that 1/2 inch and the 5/8 plus the 1 7/16 to give you an approximate number. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's the best I got. In terms of the specific dimensions, I just don't give those out because I just don't. I give out everything else. That's just the only thing I don't give out. Gotta Fly Lee. Okay, Gotta Fly Lee. That's the username. Could you explain the difference between a single truss rod and a two-piece truss rod? Oh, explain the difference, I'm sure, is what that's supposed to be. In plane, I'm going, let me get the dictionary out. Could you explain the difference between a single truss rod and a two-piece truss rod? Well, I don't know a lot about the two-piece truss rods. I'm just going to be honest, because they usually come with a little bit of a wrapping around them, and I don't ever take the wrapping off to see what's inside, and it's like a tape that you're not supposed to take off even. So I never have, and I honestly don't know that I'm an expert on that and that I could really tell you the difference. I think the two-piece truss rod, though, I think evolved because it's two-way adjustable. I think. I'm not an expert in this. I'm talking out loud. But so some of you can maybe answer this better in the comments. But anyway, the two-way adjustable, in my opinion, is so wrong. It's just like, why would you ever need it? It just, you don't even get me started on two-way adjustable truss rods. And I think the reason they're two-way adjustable is because they're two-piece, I think. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, the two-way adjustable ones I'm not into at all. Every time I see one of those come in the shop, and I say every time, it's not every time, but 8 out of 10 times, it's adjusted the wrong way, and it made the problem worse. Yeah, I don't like two-way adjustable truss rods at all. You want to know how much I dislike them? A lot. So I'm going to pass the rest on the rest of that question because I just don't really know that much about that. Do metal frets, the different materials made of, affect the tone that much? There are going to be lots of people, especially those super picky musicians, that will tell you, yes, they do affect it a lot. I'm not one of those guys, and I tell you, no, I don't think they have much effect at all. The biggest difference on the different kinds of metal would be how long they last and whether or not they get wore out. But I would say for your average musician, I wouldn't even care about that. I just use standard fret wire. It works fine. It's been used for hundreds of years and it works great. I just don't see the need for all that. I don't know. That's just me. And you can certainly have a different opinion on that. Dickie Adcock, was the other channel this morning a April Fool's joke? I have no idea what that means. Sorry, Dickie. The other channel. First of all, I don't have another channel. Second of all, we did put a little April Fool's joke at the beginning of this today. I don't know if you saw it or not. Depends on what time you started in and whether or not you started at the beginning or live with me. But if you started at the very beginning, we did have a little April Fool's fun there at the beginning. Reg D, can you sing us a song today? I'd say the answer is no, because I don't have anything around here to accompany me with at the moment, unfortunately. But thank you for asking. Maybe I'll try to do something next week. If you'll tune in next week, Reg D, I'll try to remember to do something. Lon, Jerry, I really enjoyed watching you tell us about the gifts you get. Could you show us more of that? Well, fine, Lon, I will. I hope nobody ever thinks I'm begging for gifts. I don't get a lot of gifts, but the ones I get, I do show them, and I do appreciate them very much. I think it's wonderful that people think enough of me to send me stuff like that. And whenever I do get them, I will show them. Now, anymore, I'm going to probably be showing them in my daily vlogs because I'll show them the next day after I receive them. Probably won't be saving them up for the shop talks like I used to do. I don't know. If you have a preference on that and you really prefer that they always be in the shop talks, I can do that, if that's what you would prefer. But I typically put them in the daily vlogs now. Let's see here. Yeah, David has to be contrary and says that the Martin standard sound hole placement is not acoustically superior. CF Martin did not develop the centered sound hole. You're welcome to anything you want to say, David. I'm not even going to try to argue with you about it because I think the results speak for themselves. Steve's Strings. What is the easiest way to bend sides on a first guitar build? Well, I would say, Steve, that really is going to depend a lot on the kind of wood you use. Certain kinds of wood, you can just simply boil them and bend them very easily, especially if you have a mold that will shape them into the shape you want them. If you're shaping them by hand, then, you know, I made my own bender here, and you can see here's the post of the bender here. This has an electric element going up through it. But if you really want something simple that you can use, especially starting off, you can just take a piece of metal pipe, put a propane torch in the end of it, heat up that pipe. It'll get too hot probably. You'll have to work with adjusting it. But you want it where you do get steam. But the trick of bending wood, period, is, well, I don't have the piece of wood here, the piece of metal that I would normally show. This is a very small, thin piece of metal. I was bending binding, so I needed something small to bend the binding. But the trick of bending metal around anything hot is to use a piece of metal, a very flexible, soft, well, soft isn't probably the right word, but like the side of a tin can, a smooth side of a tin can. Like a Crisco can would be a good example, and then to pull that metal down around the wood, and that does two things. Number one, it spreads the stress out because you're pulling on the metal rather than the wood. If you pull on the wood, you've got one stress point right in the middle and it's going to break. If you pull on this, it spreads the stress around the bend, and the second thing it does is it holds the steam, because you got this solid piece of metal there. It holds the steam between the piece you're bending and this metal, and it keeps that steam in there. It keeps it moist and it helps it bend. So those are the tricks I've got for you on that, and that's about all I got, unfortunately. Hopefully that helps you. Paul Walton, you know, I think we're way past our time. Gee whiz, I didn't realize we were that far past our time. It's 9:22. Holy mackerel, the time flew on this one. I think I better get off of here. I'm going to do one more question. I'm sorry. Man, I did not realize we were this long. Am I looking at the wrong thing here? Yeah, man, I can't believe we went that far. Would soft maple wood work for a mandolin back? You know, I haven't really heard or seen anybody use it, but I don't see why it wouldn't work just fine. I mean, I really don't. People use all kinds of different kinds of woods to make all kinds of different kinds of instruments, and I honestly don't see why a soft maple, like just your silver leaf maple, wouldn't work just fine. That's just an opinion. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't see why it wouldn't work just fine. I'm going to let it go there. I'm sorry I ran it so long today. I hope you enjoyed it. I got on my soapbox a couple times. But you know me, I can't do this without getting on the soapbox once or twice. I hope you'll tune again. Let me say that one more time. I hope you'll tune in again next Friday. Same time, same place, and I hope you'll continue to watch those daily vlogs, and hopefully watch for part 8 of that mandolin build this evening. The world's finest mandolin ever built by a human, which I said is an April Fool's joke because it's just a goal. That's not a statement of fact. Thank you so much.